All right. I wanted to take a quick break from the interviews that we've been doing with different guests, and we'll come back to that next week. But I wanted to take a quick break to kind of talk about this book that I've been reading, and I just finished it, but there was one particular chapter in it that really stood out to me, and it's called, the book is called Blitzscaling, so I'll show it up here, by Reid, Hoffman, and Chris Ye, but specifically it's part 5, the broader landscape of blitzscaling, where most of the book he talks specifically about how to take your startup from startup phase to achieving certain mile markers to where you can raise a bunch of funding and then scale up. I'll read you the kind of definition of it so you can hear it in their own words instead of just mine. Here it is. So blitzscaling is a strategy and set of techniques for driving and managing extremely rapid growth that prioritizes speed over efficiency in an environment of uncertainty. There's another definition over here that kind of shows like when to do it. It's when a startup matures to the point where it has a killer product, a clear and sizable market, and a robust distribution channel. It has the opportunity to become a scale-up, which is a world-changing company that touches millions or even billions of lives. So when you're hearing about Airbnb, Uber, Facebook, all these companies like this that, you know, they started off small, they started off local, and then all of a sudden they raise $100 million, and then you just hear the next year they're just burning through money, they're not profitable, they're losing money like crazy, they're hiring tons of people, they've got foosball tables in their headquarters. This is usually the scale-up stage where they're more focused, like we said in the definition, more focused on managing extremely rapid growth and prioritizing speed over efficiency in an environment of uncertainty. So they're focusing more on growth and getting that return for their investors and really dominating the market. The whole point of blitzscaling is to kind of overtake the competition before they even have a chance. Blitzscaling actually comes from Blitzkrieg, which is the Germans in World War II. What they would do is just overwhelming speed is how they would beat their opponents because they weren't bigger than them. They didn't have, physical strength advantage over them. They were just had to be faster, the best. And if you could do that, you could usually overwhelm your opponent. So now blitzscaling is scaling your company with lightning-like speed. So that's the whole point, and taking some, maybe unnecessary risks so that you can kind of dominate the market before anybody else has the chance to. I don't know if you remember, the first few years that Uber and Lyft and these companies started coming out, there was a dozen different options that you could choose from. And then after a while, the other ones kind of went out of business, they ran out of funding. Now we've really only got about Uber and Lyft are our main two options. Besides that, I wanted to kind of go into a few points. This is going to be very similar to the first video I did alone of why be a vagabond, because this kind of really hit home on one, why to be a vagabond, but two, this book only came out, like Blitzscaling, great book, you should definitely read it if you're a startup founder or into entrepreneurship, but it only came out in 2018, so that was only 6 years ago. And it's so funny because now you can see certain parts of it are already out of date, and there's so many facts in here. Specifically this chapter, he goes into he talks a lot about China, and some of the facts are just way off because things have been updated or things have changed or new players have come into the market. One of the examples, which is more specific to America, is he talks about, the first round was Silicon Valley, and then after that came Boston and Austin are now kind of like the next wave of startup communities across the US. But now, 6 years later, we can see that Boulder, Colorado, Miami, and New York are really taking off as well. Just looking back 6 years, London was barely even considered a startup hub. Now Paris is becoming one, Milan, Italy is becoming one, Tokyo and Seoul are really taking off. He talked a lot about China and specifically Guangzhou, but now just the last few years we've seen Shenzhen really come up, Hong Kong really coming up. So a lot of pros all over the place, a lot of different communities that are starting to add more entrepreneurship and new places that want to, that are even at the earlier stages, like Chile. I think the entrepreneurial program down there is called Startup Chile, and they're actually trying to recruit entrepreneurs from around the world to come and live in Chile and build in Santiago, Chile, and build their startups there and stay there and kind of add to the community. So we're starting to see that all over. From my talks in Mexico, I heard a lot of people talking good about Brazil, and they were saying that in Rio they're actually doing a really good job of recruiting startups and starting to build that culture. So it's starting to happen all over the world, all at once. And for a book that's only 6 years old, pieces of it are already out of date, which is a good thing, that things are moving that fast all over the place. He talks a little bit about Europe and how he does kind of mention how things are moving in that direction, so he definitely was ahead of his time. He talks about Stockholm, Sweden, back then actually has the second highest amount of unicorns of any city on the planet. If you don't know what a unicorn is, it's a startup that starts, builds, and eventually becomes $1 billion company. So Stockholm, Sweden was number 2, right behind Silicon Valley in California, and the kind of main player in that is Spotify. But I wanted to go into kind of just a few other points of how fast things are moving right now. And if you don't get anything else from this video, more than anything, keep your eye on this channel and keep your eyes on what's really happening outside of the US borders, because things are changing a lot faster out there than they are in here. We just don't hear about it because we hear a lot more of what's happening in our country, because it is a pretty big country. We've heard about NVIDIA a million times over the last year. If you've heard anything about AI or GPUs or anything else, you've heard of NVIDIA and the crazy rise that it's had. But I think we're about to start seeing a lot more entrepreneurship. So not just entrepreneurship, like people starting something from scratch, but I think a lot of these companies are going to start taking certain entrepreneurial aspects back to their company. They're going to start building more things inside. Google has a Google X department where they're building new things from within. But let's look at NVIDIA for a second, where the company was founded in 1996. 99, it went on the stock market. From 99 to 2015, the price of the stock there, it's like $1 per share, and it stayed between $1 and $5 for 16 years. Then, all of a sudden, the last 9 years, it went from $5 to $1,208 is what it is today in June 2024. So it's just this crazy, long, like almost unmoving stock. And then all of a sudden, they start working on GPUs and it just takes off. So, it takes off once whenever computer gaming starts to happen more regularly. And then you can see a really big bump in 2022 whenever AI starts to take off. A little dip, and then 2023, it really takes back up again. So you just never know, the changes that are going to help your company before they blow up, and 2, what kind of outside forces around the world that are going to help, because NVIDIA was already working on these GPUs for gaming specifically, and that was a great market. They were very profitable with that. And then all of a sudden, OpenAI comes out with ChatGPT for the public and makes it accessible for everyone, or easy enough for everyone to use. And then Google comes out with Bard, and now there's Opus. There's so many different AIs out there that need these GPUs to process everything. And now you also need the GPUs in your computers to start processing everything. And from processing all these AIs, since from what I'm hearing, we're going to be having these AIs like specifically custom built for each individual and kind of the next generation of laptops on your laptop. So it's no longer just going to be, ChatGPT is in some warehouse somewhere in California processing your data and sending it back to you, but now it's all locally on your device. And another thing that's changing is this, from what I hear, this might actually be the last generation of consoles, or maybe the next one might be the last one, when it comes to PlayStation and Xbox, since a lot of these new TVs that are coming out are going to have the GPUs already built into them. And if you can stream movies and TV shows, why can't you stream video games? So it's coming. all that to say, you never really know what's going to be the key factor that's going to shape things differently. One point I wrote down was, like, the world's so big and it's just so, like, different all over, and each of these countries have geography problems, pros and cons. They have government pros and cons. They have cultural pros and cons. They have, like, land where they're at, location pros and cons, relationship pros and cons, history pros and cons. So it's just every single one of these countries, and even these regions within the countries, have advantages and disadvantages that are going to drastically change how really the next 20, 30, 40 years of innovation shape the rest of the planet. We look at something not simple, but something like government involvement, where here in the US it's we see, like, our senators tend to honestly just slow things down whenever it comes to innovation, which is, it depends on the side that you're arguing. If you're super pro AI, you know, like it's going to take care of everything and solve every problem, you probably want, you know, just unbound innovation on AI. I wrote down here, you know, local problems require local solutions, and we look at something a lot more less global and more or less just focus in on, like, Latin America, and that's still, you know, hundreds of millions of people. Like, at the time of writing this, I don't know how things have changed up till now. I don't have the data in front of me. But we look at, you know, in 2018, 50% of people in Latin America did not have bank accounts. Most of them are dealing purely in cash or supporting it, keeping it, like, somewhere in their own home instead of putting it in a bank. So it made it very difficult for certain, like, online marketplaces to happen, because if you don't have a bank account, you can't pay for certain things. And it's actually very interesting because Japan actually solved this in a different way. But there's a company called Mercado Pago. Please excuse my lack of an accent. It's now leading as, like, the leading e-commerce payment system in Latin America, because they figured out a way to, you know, get people a debit card so they can put money on that so they can make payments this way, and you can do it a different way. Whereas in Japan, if you wanted to buy something, you can buy things online on Amazon and different delivery services, and what you can do is actually just go to your local 7-Eleven or Family Mart, look up your account, there's a special kiosk for it, and pay with cash if you want to use just cash. Things are changing now. Japan's becoming a lot more cashless society, though back in 2017 when I went, it was heavily cash-based. I left with a lot of coins. It was a great time. And going back to that, local problems require these local solutions. So it's going to be fascinating to see what kind of startups come out of Latin America, kind of Southeast Asia, as they all start to make that conversion from cash-based to cashless. So very excited for that. A few cities to kind of keep your eye on. This is now, I'll probably update this next year, but in China, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Beijing. In India, Chennai, Pune, and Hyderabad were listed as the 3 top startup hubs in India. In Japan, it was Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, and Italy, Milan, and Rome. I'm sure we can name different places for every single country, but these are kind of just top of my list right now to keep an eye on. How do you blitzscale a city or a country? That's going to change. They talk about this a little bit in the book, and it changes per country. We're starting to see, kind of like my talk with Robert a few episodes ago, we talked about how all over Italy the local government is now starting to give money, or the government as a whole is starting to give money to these different venture capital funds for the sole purpose of investing in startups. So maybe in Italy and the EU, that's how they're going to do it. Maybe in China, it's a whole different thing of, hey, we're just not going to, like, take your company from you and you can continue to invest to a certain point. Every single one of these countries has different laws, regulations, taxes, loopholes you got to jump through. So it's just going to change per city, per country. And now we're seeing even something as simple as Miami. I forget the mayor's name. In 2020, he was doing such a great job of basically recruiting startups and companies to move to Miami. I think somebody ran the math, and it was like every tweet he did, I think he tweeted like twice a day, and they were saying because of how many businesses are moving to Miami, he's bringing in the equivalent of like $3 million for every tweet he sends out, just by getting people to move there. They became very startup friendly. They opened up, the restaurants and businesses way earlier than most other people. So it just attracted a lot of things, and that begs other questions of what happens whenever people are moving around within your country. Does that hurt other states? Obviously, but it helps other states. What happens whenever people who vote a certain way move there? We don't know. We haven't seen that yet. So we're very excited. I mean, we got an election coming up in 5 months, so we're going to see how that changes things. And then even just explosive growth of international companies, not just entrepreneurship within your country, but now something that blew up as fast as TikTok. That, they had a version of it in China for a while, and then they created the American one. And we've just seen how insanely fast it blew up because they had the right algorithm. We're just seeing how fast things are changing. We're seeing, I think Facebook has basically hit a limit on how many people they can, get on their product. The upper limit, they've reached total market reach. I honestly don't know any other company. I can't think of one that has so fully reached their TAM, their total addressable market, to a certain point. And you can argue that, it's everyone on planet Earth, but at the end of the day, there's just some people who aren't going to use Facebook or Meta or whatever they're calling themselves now. And now they're at a point where they're putting blimps over India, purely so they can give internet to people in that area so that they can create Facebook accounts. So it's getting to an absurd level where you've done it. You've reached everyone you possibly could, and anybody who's left on Earth who doesn't have a Facebook account just doesn't want one. So keep your eyes on China, keep your eyes on India, Japan, keep your eyes on Europe as a whole. We talked a lot with Robert about how bullish and how excited he is for the next few years for Europe and all the great things that they're doing. And I'm excited for South America and Mexico as well. So keep your eyes on those. We'll be back next week with some more interviews. I'm hoping to interview a few people from Europe and hoping to find a few from South America and maybe some more in Asia. So if you know anybody that is building a startup or is an entrepreneur working on something interesting or something innovative, send them my way. I'd love to talk to them and show off what they're doing. So happy to help, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.